Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me and see me? Yes. Okay, good. Good. Nice to be with you all. I have an announcement. I have another meditation offering that'll be starting in September. It'll be the first Wednesday of the month in September, and then continuing onward. And it's for people in different time zones. So it's in the daytime. It's 12:30 Colorado time. And so you do the math. I think it puts you at like 7:30 um, London time. And so a lot of people requested that. So once a month, starting Wednesday, the first Wednesday in September, first Wednesday of the month. Okay, I butchered that pretty good. Why doesn't everyone just take a moment and find your seat, get comfortable? And tonight I'd like to speak a little bit about inquiry. And the mistake most of us make, in relationship to the practice of inquiry is that they do it from the perspective of mind. They do it from a philosophical perspective. So like with any spiritual practice, the first thing we're doing is we're stepping back. We're unhooking from our thinking mind. We're unhooking from our personality. And so we can play along here in this moment is you can take a step back from your day, to the busyness of life, from who you know yourself to be in an ordinary sense. So we're letting go of this. And I invite you just to come down into the space of the heart. And so, can you feel into your heart? Just notice, oh, what is that like? What is the heart like? What does it feel like in this moment? The space of the heart. What does it feel like? And so as you're breathing and feeling and opening, and I'm going to invite you just to get in touch with a place within that is just silently warm, just gently radiant or luminous. And in this place, you'll notice there's a knowingness to this aspect of the heart, a knowingness. And so it's from this place that we want to view. It's from this place we want to inquire. This quiet presence of knowingness. This is a point where, as we feel inside, it has integrity. We know this place, a place of just deep knowing. It's like this is where you trust yourself fully and completely. You're not doubting. Not doubting. And so from this place, almost like a silent nobility, I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to invite you just to respond. And you can respond out loud if you're home alone, or just respond silently, or just see what comes forward. And so the question is like, what is this life about? What is my life about? Just notice the first thing that comes. What is my life about? And so we're breathing and feeling and opening. What is this life about? What's it about? So as you're breathing, as you're feeling, as you're experiencing, inviting a deep honesty to come forward. What is this life about? Truly. And so with each time I ask the question, you may notice the answer may shift, it may deepen, it may change. What is this life about for you? Are you letting your ego rule you? Your busyness rule you? Your fight or flight rule you? Your habitual nature rule you? What is this life about? About. So we're breathing and feeling and opening. And being honest about what comes forward. What is truly important to me? So as you feel into the depth of your heart, the quiet radiance of the heart, we ask, what is truly important to me? So we're breathing, we're feeling, we're opening. What is truly important to me? And just noticing experientially what's happening in your body, in your presence. As you really reflect deeply, feel into this question, you allow this question to take you deeper into the presence of, into a deeper connection with your soul. What is truly important to me? And as you breathe, as you feel, as you open, as you experience more fully, you might ask another question. Like, what am I? What is this presence that I am? So if you feel into yourself experientially, what is this presence that I am? What is this presence that I am? Am I simply a thinking mind, a flesh body? Am I a character with all these habits? Or is there something much deeper here? What am I? in the depth of my being. Feeling into yourself. And experiencing. And for those of you thinking and looking for the right answer, repeating the words of what the Buddha said or what Adyashanti said or whatever it is, if you can unhook from that and feel directly what it is that you are. As you feel into your direct experience, what's here beyond thought? What's here that witnesses thought? What's here that is awake to the sound of my voice? What's here that is awake to the movement of sensation within your body? What's here that's beyond the body? It's beyond the body. So breathing, feeling, opening. And experiencing. What's here that is awake? What's here that is awake in this moment? What is it that you truly are? As you feel and experience directly. As you feel and experience directly. And so as you open your eyes, I'll ask you another inquiry question. Can you stay with your direct experience with your eyes open? As you look around the room, can you stay connected to the heart, to this luminous presence of radiance as your eyes are open? Is meditation, is connection with your direct experience something that only happens when eyes are closed? And so the question might be, what's life like when you witness reality from the space of your heart, from the space of true nature, a silent radiance? What is life like when I experience life directly in this moment, directly in this moment? And so beautiful. So we can gently relax the formality of the inquiry process. And satsang is inquiry. It's looking into life, examining this question of, well, what's true and what's not? What is most important to me? To me. I apologize if some of you heard me clicking around the other live stream, the Facebook live stream, I was having trouble with tonight for some unknown reason. And so, my question is can I be fully with you and click around on another computer and invite the second group into the room? This is the challenge of being human, is can we be present with everything life throws at us? Can we be present, and can we experience life directly without the commentator? Like, what is that like to live without a commentator? Well, I can tell you about a half hour ago, my wife and I, we just clicked on the Olympics and we're watching these incredible gymnasts, jump and twirl and twist and do these wild acrobatics, which, as I felt into them directly, I felt this power, this charge, like this explosive radiance and dynamic energy. I'm feeling it flowing through them, being transmitted from them to the entirety of the world. And it's so beautiful to see people who, are masters at their gift. And it's such a sad thing, because then there's this guy, I'm just going to say this, YouTube won't like it, and there's just some jackass commenting on their form and all the little things they do wrong. And, one of the girls, she's spinning upside down and backwards, doing a triple flip of some sort, her legs came apart just, a couple inches. And immediately they're commenting on how she's going to lose points and how that's no good. And I'm just, my God, can you just sit back and be silent and experience the glory and the power, the majesty of this young woman who's, an angel? Can you just sit back and see her presence? We live in this silly world where we put on shows and then we judge and we criticize, we nitpick. That's the job of an Olympic judge, to nitpick. It brings tears to my eyes just seeing these brilliant lights. They're such powerhouses, these young women. And, to look at them and say, she messed that up. Yeah, it's like it's a crazy thing of the superego. And I'm a fan of sharpening the sword and being discerning and trying your best and perfecting whatever it is you do. But it's like such a tragedy to see. I wish the sports was just like a parade. People just enjoy the parade, enjoy the display, to be honored that, like, God, look at all these beautiful people from all over the world displaying themselves so open-heartedly, vulnerably, giving everything. In a sense, for us, the audience. And so anyways, with the practice of inquiry, it's very important. The very important aspect of the spiritual path is to question. And so the first question we started with today was, what is my life about? And if you ask your ego, it might give you a quick answer of something you read in a book. It's like, well, what did Adyashanti said? He said, I want to know the truth. So that's what I'm supposed to say. My life is about the truth. and of course, with inquiry, we don't want to practice from our head. We don't want to practice we're not practicing openness in a repetitive way. And so the first thing we do is we step into our heart. We step into the goodness of our being. And it requires, it's almost like this humble, innocent honesty. This humble, innocent honesty. And so when we ask, like, well, what is my life about? And the first thing might come forward, and our ego might be honest. Say, seems like all I do is work. All I do is work. My life is about work. But then we ask the question again, like, what is your life about? What is this life about? And from a place of openness, as you allow that question to draw you deeper in, you might see something really true about you, not like an egoic truth, but a deeper truth that my life is about healing. My life is about awakening. It's about love. It's about freedom. And see here, we just ask the question twice. And the first time as we inquire, again, it's normal to get an egoic answer. Sometimes in a path like the diamond approach, we might ask the question, 25 times for 10 minutes. And we just keep looking like what comes forward. And it may be all ego for the first 9.5 minutes of just sharing your angst or your frustration about where your life is and what's going on in your life. But as you continue to stay open and humble with the question and practice from a place of openness, witness from a place of openness, descend into a place of openness, you might discover that your soul is here. That your soul is here. And I've told this story often, but I'll just tell it again just for it's a story I like. But when I was 14 years old, there was something that just started to wake up in me. There's some type of openness that was very receptive, like incredibly receptive. And I don't know what happened at the age 14, but it just came forward. And I can remember I was working at like an old folks home, a nursing home, and I would carry these trays of food, to the old folks there, and then I would take their plates, I'd clear their tables when they were done eating, and I'd go back to the dishwasher. And the dishwasher, he was this fella. His name was Eric Wright. I remember him, and he was a hippie of some sort. Like he was a drummer. He liked the Grateful Dead. And there was just something, he's a little bit older than me, not much older, maybe a year or two. And there was just something subtly awake in him. Like we were in suburban Ohio. So everything was same. Everyone had the same haircut, the same look. And I was just talking to him one day, and, it just came up that he was a vegetarian. And as soon as I heard that word, there was something awake in me that just said, yes. Yes. A bell, something true just came alive within me. And so when we're awake, we can really hear the truth. And in order to inquire, we have to be in touch with this deep aspect of ourself that can really hear. Now, I can say this, that once upon a time I was visiting with a family member. They're a little bit older, and they just worked hard their whole life. And every time I saw them, they'd say, hey, Craig, what have you been up to? And I would tell them very clearly, like what I had been doing. And then a couple minutes later, they'd kind of be doing something, maybe washing dishes or talking to someone else. And they'd look at me again and they'd say, "Hey, Craig, what have you been up to?" And I said, "My God, did you know?" I just answered that question. Did you know that? And they had no idea. Like completely gone. Just completely asleep at the wheel. Just going through the motions. Or just asking someone like, "Hey, how you doing?" "Fine." "Hey, how you doing?" "Fine." I just told you I was like, are you awake to yourself? Or are you asleep on autopilot? And so a lot of people, I've been on a number of retreats and, I've been on these big retreats, say with Adyashanti, and, a fun question he likes to ask is like, what do you want? Like basically, like, what do you want on the path? Like, what are you doing here? And it's funny because a lot of the people, when they ask that question, they'll say, I want to know the truth. But the reason they say that is because, Adya wrote a book once, and in the book he said, that was my answer, is I want to know the truth. And so they memorized the right answer from their teacher. And I can look on Adya's face when he knows, it's like, they're just parroting back what I have said. They're just parroting back the, quote unquote right answer. But with inquiry, there is no right answer, according to some playbook in the mind. The right answer is what's true in your heart. And what's true in your heart in this moment might be like, what do you want? I want to stop hurting. I want to stop hurting. And if you ever meet with someone and they say something like that, you can see there's almost like tears beginning to form in their eyes because they're in pain. They're in their experience directly. And as they admit, like, I want to stop hurting, it's their heart compassionately embracing the pain they're in, acknowledging the pain they're in, feeling it directly. Feeling it directly. If they're not BSing and given the quote unquote right answer, they're with their experience. And the beautiful thing about inquiry, like when you get in touch with the truth, things start to move, they start to shift. There's a dynamism. Like things become dynamic and they begin to flow. As soon as you admit, like, I want to be free of pain, like when you admit that from deep within, the pain actually begins to break. It begins to move, begins to unravel and release. If you ask, well, what do I truly want? Like, for me, it was, I want to be free. I had that answer on the tip of my tongue. I'm going to say since the day I was born, but probably, since I was, 10 or 12 or something. There's just, before I even knew the word freedom, there was just this experience I had as a child of just, there'd be times when I could let go and just be boundless. Be boundless. And when I first heard the word freedom, I was like, oh, that's what it is. I want to be free. As soon as I admit it out loud, I could feel the walls of ego beginning to dissolve and this openness beginning to spread out in all directions. But again, to truly inquire, it requires a depth of honesty. A depth of honesty. And most people think to be honest is to admit what's going on egoically. And there's, of course, there's a truth to that. That's one level of honesty. Like if someone asks, like, well, how you doing? I'm fine. And that's may be how the ego feels. It may feel fine. Like you may feel fine egoically. But as you ask the question a little deeper, like, how are you truly doing? How are you truly doing? And I realize, oh, I'm actually doing like really good. There's something like quiet and beautiful within me when I look deeper. Sometimes it's the opposite. You say you're doing fine, though you look deeper and you're like, oh my gosh, there is so much pain here. You realize, oh my gosh, I have been avoiding myself for the last 10 years. 10 years. And, I live in this family where, we value work. Like if you're not working, you're worthless. It's kind of the motto that my family has. It's like it's just good, solid Western work ethic. If you're not working, you're worthless. And so I've had all these people in my family who they've worked way too hard their entire life. And they never stop to question, like, do I want to do this work? Is this in alignment with my heart? How do I feel when I go to work? Basically, they put themselves last, and they put the corporation or the business or whatever it was first. Their schedule first, the boss's schedule. Most of us, our schedule isn't even ours, it's our boss's. And a couple people in my family, I hate to say it, they learn to live this way through drinking and, sometimes doing something silly like taking pain pills. And, there'd be times when I even ask them, like, do you take pain pills? And they say, no, I don't do that. I don't do those things. I'm like, okay. But they're telling me their belly's bleeding, with ulcers and this type of thing. Okay, well, what's going on here? And I ask them again a different way. Like, oh yeah, I take, Advil every day. The big one. Like, that's a pain pill. That's a pain pill. That's killing your stomach. It's destroying you on the inside. It's helping you to repress your feelings so you can continue to work and be a part of this machine that I'm not certain you want to be a part of. Of course, I didn't say that, but, it's when we start to look like, what am I actually doing in life? Am I awake to my body? Am I awake to my body? Because as you begin to work with this practice of inquiry, you realize that your body, your nervous system, your presence, if we take it a step deeper, is this wonderful matrix of intelligence. It's this wonderful matrix of it. It's alive intelligence. It's awake awareness is how the Buddha would call it. It's this whole field of intelligence. And inquiry invites you to get in touch with that. Meditation invites you to get in touch with it. Yoga invites you to get in touch with it. The thing that's nice about inquiry is it helps you to see through like your shadows, where you hold on, where you hide, where you avoid. It helps you to kind of laser in on, well, you're like, what is my life about? Like truly. I mean, a great question, to really look at shadow as well. If I did map out my schedule, like if truth is the most important thing in my life, how much time do I spend investigating the nature of reality? If your truth is healing, how much time do you spend a day healing, giving yourself to the path of healing? Like how much time? If you want to be free, Are you sitting with this question of what does it mean to be free? Every moment of your life, or for 3 minutes a day, or 3 minutes a week, or what is it? Like, what is it for you? And again, no judgment here, but it just helps you to become clear. Like I can remember there was that finance guru lady, what's her name? Suze Orman, I think that was her name. This was many years ago when my finances were a total train wreck, and I was in outrageous debt, and it was just a mess all around. And she said, open up all your bills and write them all down. Like make a spreadsheet, like make a list, and then write down how much money you make, and then write down how you spend every single dollar. And I can remember when I did that, I was like, oh, like, oh, like Mr. Holiday, you spend a lot of money each month on kombucha. And meanwhile, you're in debt. It's like, okay, maybe we need to drink less kombucha. Like you spend this much money on little organic snacks, or whatever it is that silly vegans spend money on. You spend this much money on that old diesel truck that you have, Craig, and it keeps breaking down. You should sell that thing, and so you begin to see clearly as you inquire into, like, what is your life about? And again, this is so important here. We don't ask the question for the perspective of the superego or the critic. The critic will always tell you, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it bad. You're not doing it good enough. Whereas when we open into the heart of inquiry, there's a lightness of being when we ask a question. Like we might say, okay, I've been doing this healing work for a long time. Nothing seems to be changing. Why is that? If you ask your superego, it might tell you something critical, like you're not doing it right, or you'll never heal, you're meant to suffer, none of this works. But if you ask your heart, like, your heart might just tell you, oh, maybe you need to soften a little bit while you're doing your healing practices. You might need to soften. You might need to breathe more deeply. Maybe you need to spend a little bit more time with that edge of pain. With that edge of pain. And can you breathe into that? Can you open into that edge? And truly begin to look at, well, what's on the other side? As I open and I embrace what's here. And so I encourage you, if inquiry is not, a big part of your spiritual practice, just to play around with it. To play around with it. Just find a question. And you can just sit on your cushion and maybe spend 10 minutes with this question. What is my life about? What's it about? And you might find as you ask your heart, you might say, I've been working too much. I've been chasing too much. I've been watching too many episodes of The Bachelor. Whatever it is that people do. And maybe I could do a little less of that. But more importantly, is seeing that there's something else that wants to come forward. And what you'll find is more and more as you inquire within, you begin to give birth to this inner teacher, this inner presence that leads you and guides you. It has this immense wisdom. This immense wisdom. And if any of you here want to be awake, we can never be awake in an abiding way unless you are in touch directly with this wisdom, with this intelligence, which is quality, the very essence of your being, is it's intelligent. intelligent, has a wisdom, a power, an intuitive intelligence, which will guide you forward in life. So anyways, so I've spoken a lot. I'm going to invite some questions. If anyone has one, you can bring one forward. If anyone emailed me a question, please bring it forward in the chat. I've been having a lot of trouble just keeping up with my emails recently. I apologize to any of you who I've let down if you email me and you want a quick answer. It's just coming in from too many directions with me. So anyways, you get the gist. All right. Beautiful. See what's popping up on the screen here. Is it Kenna? Are you here?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you. I'm really deeply curious about the karma of animals, and I wanted to know what you had to say about it. I've read a few things. I've read that as humans, we've at one time been reincarnated as animals. I've read that after animals die, they also just cycle back around and come back as the same form. So I was just curious what you had to say.
Yeah, okay. That's kind of a fun question. So I can say this, that within my own experience, there's been different times when God has lifted me up into the different heaven realms and shown me a great play and matrix of life. And so that'll give me a particular view and perspective of the nature of things. And whenever we have a question like this, you can read in a book like The Karma of Animals, and the author of the book may tell you their thoughts. It may tell you their intuitive psychic experience. They may have cities and be able to see into these things. They may have, some level of intuition, but then it may be confused by a spiritual dogma of some sort. With me, I can tell you, what I've seen, what I know to be true. But again, it won't, like none of these types of questions, like, well, what happens after death? We can get an answer from, someone we respect. And I encourage you just to feel into it and just see, like, what does that feel true to me? But you'll never truly be satisfied until you see or experience these things directly. And so, one of the things that has been shown to me is that all of life is just eternally growing into greater and greater complexity. We see this in the outward world, just in the form of evolution. But of course, evolution happens in all the kingdoms. Evolution isn't just something for humans. And so the evolution that happens in humanity, it's also happening within the heaven realms. Within the heaven realms. It's a whole other thing. But so if dogs are the easiest to look at. And I'll say monkeys, but not many people are hanging out with monkeys. But if you look into the eyes of your dog or your cat, and if you just feel into them, if you feel like, where are they at evolution? In the context of evolution, like, where are they at? Like, I have these two dogs in my house. Now, Doodles, He's a very advanced soul, yeah, especially with a name like Doodles. He's an incredibly high being, and he is, you know, like one step out of the human kingdom. He has a massive heart. Like the presence of his heart is just immense, immense. He has an animal nature, of course. He's a dog. We all have animal natures, but like he doesn't bark. He doesn't attack. He doesn't fight. So he has a very low degree of animal nature within him. Like he has a heart of love. And so like people who see Doodles comes up and he wants you to pet him, but he wants to rub up against your leg and kind of snuggle with you and say hi. And so, I can, point this out that, like, say I'm walking down the street and I'll have my two dogs with me. And if there's someone coming down the street with another dog, or even maybe they don't even have a dog, but Buster, he's this little guy. He's more of he's he has more animal nature in him. He has more dog nature in him. So when he sees someone coming, he starts growling and barking and getting all, furious and acting like the guard dog. So he acts purely from instinct. From instinct. Like his animal dog instinct, which is, a little bit of a aggression in it. And so dogs, for example, that have more aggression, just like humans who have more aggression within them, is from a place of evolution. They have, and I hate to say the word lower. I'm trying to say a better word than lower. They're just less developed. They're more animalistic, and you see that they haven't grown fully into their heart, leading them. So just as you and I grow in this path, and we might come into this world, and we might have a real aggressive nature. But as we spend time in the spiritual path, we connect more with our vast, spacious awareness. We connect more with the heart, this sense of quiet strength and power in our belly, and it becomes less about fight or flight. Less about fight or flight. More about, it becomes more about love and inclusivity and service, like giving. And so just as we are evolving, in a sense, through the levels of, growth and maturation and awakening, so are dogs, so are cats. And, eventually when a soul is the soul of, like, say, Doodles, it's really developed, the next incarnation, they might just pop into, human form. And then they have to kind of walk through the layers of human form. And so you'll see this too, like, so some dogs have like lots of personality. They have lots of emotion. Again, they're getting ready to, transcend or step into the realm of the human body. Whereas other dogs have no personality. They're all fight or flight. They're all instinct. And so anyways, what I've found helpful, would say, like, a question like this, it's really a question like, what is this life about? What is this world about? When we begin to see that this world is a world of just continuous growth, it's like God gives birth to little beings, just like microscopic beings. And those beings grow and they evolve in complexity. And so the laws of God and the laws of the universal laws of nature, one law, it's all growth. It's all growth. And the beautiful thing is like when you take this into your heart from a spiritual perspective, it really softens this idea of getting to an endpoint or being done. which is, one of the shadow sides of spirituality, with this idea that we can be done, that we can be done. It's like, no, like the soul will grow forever. And if you look at God, God is always revealing different aspects of the self. The longer you're on the path, you don't just get to some point where it's just like, oh, that's it. Sorry, folks, end of show. Like that's the end of it. It's just radiant peace and nothing else. It's radiant peace, and it becomes warmer and brighter and more fluid, and it's mixed with a strength and a power and a fearlessness and immensity, and it grows and it grows and it grows. The ego likes things to be in point. We like to know, well, what is the answer here? Like, is my dog going to be in heaven, or is my dog going to come back? Is my dog going to stay a dog forever? It wants to know. But if you truly want to know, like if you ever have a dog or an animal that dies, well, contact them. Start calling out to them. And you begin to feel their presence. You see, oh my God, like this dog's like an angel. It's a heavenly presence. A heavenly presence. And you see, oh yeah, they're growing just as I'm growing. And as we do this, we begin to have such a greater respect for all of life, for everyone and everything. And it breeds great compassion, which of course is a quality of our being. It's just great compassion. It's quality oneness. It's when you really begin to see the world and the majesty of the world, the beauty of the world, the preciousness of life. You see that, yes, God is like a giant evolution machine. It's like growing, expanding in all directions. It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. So anyways, I hope there was something helpful for someone in there. Thank you for this question. I had a dog die a few months ago and have been wondering about her reincarnation. Yeah, and like if you ever wonder about reincarnation, like a fun thing, like if you know someone on the other side and it's recent, like check into them, tune into them, you'll feel their presence. If you're really open, you'll feel their presence if you start communicating with them. But then there's a funny thing that happens. Like if like a couple of years go by and then you go and you check in with them, you might notice they're gone. It's like, well, where did they go? Like, where did they go? And so it's possible they go onto a higher heaven realm where they're less connected to the earth and they're doing their work up there. Or it's also possible that they came back to earth and that they did actually reincarnate. But it's important to remember too that time in heaven it's a little different than the earthly time frame. It's not the same time frame as on earth as it is in heaven. It's different in heaven. I don't want to go into that because that's a whole other thing. But beautiful question. And again, with all these things, none of it will mean anything to you unless you feel into it yourself. And that's the invitation here, is to inquire into it. And just notice, like, I can remember like once, let's say, for example, the Catholic Church, or we'll call it the Buddhist Church, taught that animals didn't have souls. And if you feel into that, there's just something in it that kind of stinks. It just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. And I can remember, like in the 80s, the early 80s, I was going to church, and all of a sudden there was like something that happened in the Catholic Church where they started to celebrate animals. They started to celebrate dogs and cats, and you could bring your dog to church on one day out of the year and get a blessing for your dog. And it's like the whole church just rose in consciousness, and people were so happy. So happy, like, of course. Because when you connect with the truth, it makes you smile. It makes There's a sense of freedom in it. There's a sense of lightheartedness in it. Whereas you're like, nope, dogs don't have souls, you know, like that pig, it doesn't have a soul. It's just a piece of meat, and so we're going to eat it or whatever. And it's just like, that is nothing. It's meaningless. It's pointless. But like I had a pig. I didn't know it a pig. I had a pig that used to come visit me, and this is a beautiful pig, beautiful big pot-belly pig. He'd wander over to our yard, and we had this big kale garden. He'd be going to town, eating our kale. But we'd come out, and we were so excited to see this pig. So excited. We'd talk to him, and he'd, make faces at us and come up and let us pet him. And he was like the sweetest pig. And, then I read once, like pot-belly pig, they said has the intelligence of a 2-year-old. And I don't know how anyone can measure anything like that, but it showed us like, yeah, this pig, it has a consciousness, it had a heart, it had a personality, it had a kindness to it. Of course, it had an animal nature, it had a big stomach, it just wanted to eat all my kale. But again, when you start to feel into these things, you're like, oh, and like I have cows that are out, across the street from my yard, and I can feel into the different ones, the different consciousness of each one. It's like, okay. And a lot of them are really similar, but then some like a little bit different. There's a little bit, a little bit more advanced to some degree. And it's kind of fun to be like, oh yeah, look at that fellow over there. He's got something going on, and he'll give you a look, in his eyes, where he knows that where you're seeing each other. And when you look into the eyes of an animal, you truly see them. You truly see them. You realize, oh yeah, there's something here. There's something here that's happening to these beings. You can see the sparkle of divinity in them. In them. And as you do so, it's a different type of way. It's a different doorway to oneness. Through respecting all life. There's this wonderful book. God, my teacher David gave it to me. Kinship with all life. Kinship with all life. It's these stories from people, I think it's from people all over the world. People who had relationships with, with their animals and their dogs or like all that, but with cows, with cats, with insects. I can remember there's even a couple stories like insects. Hope I'm not wrong about that. I'm really working my memory here, but I just remember being so fascinated by these stories. Kinship with all life. There's a book. It was written like in the 70s or the 80s, but and when you start opening this door, like, what is life? What is it? Because the ego likes to tell you that life is just matter. It's just matter. Like this is just plastic, and plastic is just oil. But like when I feel into this highlighter, like I can feel its radiance. I can feel it on an atomic level. I can feel the presence of it. And that there's something here, like there's something alive about this. Even though, I could be a chemist and say, no, it's just a dumb piece of petroleum is what that there is. But as when we feel into something, and you see, oh, like everything has a presence. Even quote unquote gross, dumb objects. So anyways, it's like someone's telling a story about the chicken. Let's see. I have an extra clever, brave chicken. She's special. Yeah. And like I can remember, like we had a long time ago, I had chickens. And some of the chickens were just chicken consciousness. They were just like walking around, clucking, eating, little bugs, and they're chicken consciousness. But one little hen in particular, he felt. I'm sorry. Let me think about this. I can't remember if it was a hen or a rooster, but one. Let's say No, it was a hen. So one little hen. So what was her? I can remember her. I can't remember her name. Anyways, fell in love with my little boy, and it'd snow a little bit, and my little boy would get out the sled. The chicken would come, sit in his lap, and he goes down the sledding hill with the chicken in his lap. And then he'd walk up, and the chicken would follow him, would go down the hill again. We're like, and you see, it's like, oh, yeah, see this chicken. It's not just some rote intelligence. It's not like it got more food or anything. It wasn't survival of the fittest. The chicken had a personality. It loved my boy, no, just loved him. And him, like Noah and this chicken had this connection, a connection of love and unity. And it was like they knew each other from a previous incarnation. It was so utterly bizarre. And so when you really start to open up, if you're humble and sensitive, and you're willing to stop, like a child does, and just look how beautiful this is. Life begins to reveal its magic to us. Begins to reveal its magic to us. So anyways, okay. So we have time for another question. Looks like Richard is here. Richard, do you have a question for us? Are you here?
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, Richard.
Hey. Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. Also reminds me that the Ramana ashram had an enlightened cow. So,
Yeah. Lakshmi.
Yeah.
Lakshmi. Yeah. I was at the Mahasamadhi of Lakshmi. Mahasamadhi in India, they take the great saint and they have their burial, like their tombstone or whatever. And there's a little shrine around it. It's the Mahasamadhi I'm almost certain. I'm a betting man. I'm gonna say Lakshmi
I
was
think
the
it was
cow's
Lakshmi.
name. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Recently watched a documentary on Ramana and his nephews were talking about how Lakshmi would come in while he was giving sublime teachings and transmission, and in a dignified way get a banana, come over to Ramana, hang out for a second, get a banana, chill, and then peace out. I just thought that was so precious.
No, it is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Wanted to ask Craig today about. I just want to say one more thing on that. In that documentary, they also featured his relationship with other animals as well. Like he just had this sweet outpouring love for kind of all forms of consciousness, if you will. And it was very sweet to see that because he's so, framed as the Advaita master, and that can be seen as such a, and to see this kind of sweet heart come forward is very precious. So my question today is about, I feel a real calling. It's time for me to kind of step out and do my counseling thing. And I'm even wondering if I want to put on the spiritual teacher hat, not as a totally enlightened master or anything like that, but to provide teachings, to give instructions on meditation and the energy body and kundalini and blah, blah, blah. From where I'm at on the path. And I guess I'm just feeling a tremendous, I don't know, I'm just wrestling because I think I always want to be more than I am to get started. Like, oh God, I got to study for like 5-10 more years. I got to be way more than I am before I really get out there. Right. And yet the call is now. And I think I'm just bringing it forward because I am wrestling with it. And I'd really love to hear some of your guidance and your own experience at this kind of point, wherever this was for you, and just wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a beautiful question. I'm going to say this, and so I differ from a lot of spiritual teachers. A lot of spiritual teachers say, especially in the non-dual tradition, there's this ideology that you have to be 100% fully awake in every aspect of your being before you can take a teaching seat. And I'm just going to say the danger in that is, well, you just think you know everything. And there's this demand for perfection within oneself, and then it's a mask that you have to uphold, and it's a front that you put out there as I am the all-knowing whatever, I am enlightened. And it's very much like a diploma. Like, I'm enlightened, so therefore I can begin working. To me, I think it's a horrendous model, because teaching is a skill. It's a skill. Like, knowing how to work with individuals, it's a skill. It takes time to learn. It's something that we have to develop. I know a lot of people, quote unquote, fully enlightened. They're terrible teachers. People come to them with trauma and they give horrific responses. Tell them just deny it, ignore it. People come to them with kundalini, ignore it, ignore it, ignore it. Just meditate, meditate, meditate. Like, and there could be a lot of dropping of the ball, is if we think that when I quote unquote become enlightened, then I will therefore know how to teach. Like, no, like, teaching, like, there's a reason there's things called, we go to university and they teach teachers how to be teachers. It's like, if you're going to be in education, they have a school of education. They say, this is how you work with students. Like, this is how you do it. The same with counseling, with psychotherapy, with psychology. Here's how you work with people in a way that's healing, that's supportive, that's uplifting, that doesn't minimize, doesn't degrade, that's it's not culturally biased, and this and that. It's like here's how you're sensitive to these types of things, and here's what to look for, and here's how to diagnose, and all this type of thing. There's training in it. And I'm going to say this: it's rare that a quote unquote enlightened being is actually trained. Now, they may be in contact with their heart, which is, of course, they have the intuitive flow that is coming through them. If they're connected to their heart, they're connected to wisdom, this deep reservoir of wisdom. But again, if they have some ego, or if they have some thoughts, which everyone has some ego and some thoughts, then their wisdom is going to be filtered through that aspect of the self. And this is where you see most gurus dropping the ball. They don't have ethical boundaries and guidelines to follow, and they create a mess. And so this idea that I'm going to become enlightened and then I'll just go teach. It's like, well, do you know how to teach? Do you know how to work with people? Do you know how to work with people? And so I like to think of it as a couple of different ways. The first thing I'd like to acknowledge is everyone, every single human being on planet Earth is teaching in every moment. Everyone is transmitting in every single moment of their life. Everyone on planet Earth is transmitting. It's not something just gurus do. We all transmit from the level of consciousness that we're at. And so we are all already teaching. Now, a couple times a month, I go to the auto parts store. There's something that breaks down in one of my cars or vehicles or whatever. And I talk to the guys there and they teach me a thing or two. They teach me. And they transmit to me with confidence, with knowledge, with their presence. Like they're teaching me. They're transmitting to me. You put the radio on, the radio is transmitting, not just transmitting radio frequency, it's transmitting a vibration. I got in the car with my daughter and she was playing Kanye West. And I was like, oh my God, what is this music? This is driving me mad. It's making my nervous system feel like I'm being beat up. It's like there's something I can't handle about this. It was really showing me. So I was like, gosh, I feel really uneasy with with this experience I'm having. I should put the channel on something different. It's like something more soothing. I'm like, oh yeah, like this feels good. So I feel the transmission of the artist. And no offense to any Kanye West fans, but it just wasn't jiving with me. I know people really love him, but it just wasn't my thing. So everything's transmitting. And so if we just go to this basic truth, we're all already transmitting. We're all already teaching. And so to have a vocation in alignment with your heart, which is what Richard is speaking about, I was like, I'm feeling called to this. Good. I say follow it. Follow it. Like that's your dharma. Follow it. Follow it. Like God does not need Richard to stand back and not share. It's like that's not what God needs from us. God needs us to share of ourselves, to give of ourselves. And we're already giving of ourselves. Like we're already doing it. And so the question is like, well, am I sharing? Am I transmitting from a place of unconsciousness, which is what most of the planet does? And then semi-consciousness, which some of the planet does. So, okay, I'm semi-conscious. Like I'm trying to be a conscious parent. I'm trying to be a good friend or good partner. And so, what does he come into contact with your heart? And like your heart wants nothing more than to shine its light into the world. When the heart feels most alive, most connected, is when you are sharing of your gift. And so I fully support anyone and everyone sharing of their gift. I'll be crystal clear about this. I fully support anyone and everyone of sharing of your gift. And it's important to reflect on your gift. Right? Is my gift ready to come forward? Not am I enlightened enough, but is my gift ready? Like, is there something here? And do I know how to share it? Like, do I know how to share it? Like, is there something that it can come forward here with this? Like, I have a musical aspect of myself, but it's not really worthy of sharing because it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough. Like, I need to spend some time in silence and work on it a little bit more, I need to work on it. And so when I bring it forward, I have something of value to offer, in that department. In that department. But the way I like to look at spiritual teaching is I love the yoga teacher model. I love it. I love it. I think it's excellent. Yoga teachers don't think, so Western yoga teachers don't think they're gurus. They never ever thought in their life of being a guru. They found a practice that works, they do it, and they want to share it. And it becomes a lifestyle. They want the quote unquote yoga lifestyle. Lululemon sells the lifestyle. Somehow they charge $100 for pairs, for I want to call them plastic pants, tight pants. But they sell the lifestyle. They found a way. They're like, yeah, they see that there's open-heartedness, relaxation, fluidity in it, a radiance, and so Lululemon has found a way to sell that. But with each of us, it's like, yeah, like when you find something good, you want to share it, of course. Please share it. Our world needs more light. Our world needs more light. Like if you look on, my wife and I recently found this thing on our phone that at the bottom of the screen when you're sending a text message, you press on one of the buttons. I can't remember what button is, but all of a sudden these pictures pop up that are kind of like dancing. I don't know if it's called a meme or a GIF. I don't know what the difference is, but it's a dancing something. It's like a dancing cartoon character of like, thank you, and, or, someone making a funny face, and it's like someone is spending their life. A lot of you are spending their life, artistically just making these things, just throwing them out to the world. Here's some stupid, silly stuff from an 80s sitcom or something. And it's like, okay, they're spending 25 minutes or however long it takes to make one of those little things. And they're just putting that out. That's what they're putting out to the world. It's like, all right, like that's something. But it's like, well, you have this great heart, Richard. It's like, what is Richard going to share to the world? Is Richard simply going to be sharing memes all day? A little silly jokes, maybe bringing some lightheartedness? Or is Richard going to get in touch with the presence of lightheartedness, the source of lightheartedness, and invite that to flow out to the world? Well, boy, that's a life worth living. That's a life with meaning, with purpose, with service, with great service. Great service. And the way I like to look at spiritual teaching is the yoga teacher models. I discovered something great and I want to share it. Like it's something great. Like I did this practice and I feel this inner radiance. And imagine if, let's have some fun here. I was talking about Yogananda today at some point. Imagine if Yogananda just stayed in India and it's just, you should go to America. Sri Yukteswar said, you should go to America and spread yoga to the West. He's like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to stay here in the cave. And imagine if we never received yoga here in the United States until, until the year 3000. It's like, what a sin that would be. What a crime that would be. The suffering would just continue on and on. But the great freedom that the teachings of yoga have brought, teachings of Yogananda have brought. He said, okay, I'm going to share. I'm going to share of myself. I'm going to share of myself. And so again, like we are all already sharing. People get all puffed up and all self-conscious about, I'm going to be a spiritual teacher. It's like, don't get puffed up and don't be self-conscious. Just get in touch with what's good within you and share it the same way. Like if you came over to my house 25 years ago, I found a great recipe for vegan chocolate chip cookies. And they didn't taste like cardboard. They tasted really good. If you came into my house and, it's like, you're a vegan, I'm a vegan, let's have some cookies. I want to share the recipe. Like, this is so good. This recipe is so good. Like, there's a reason an iPhone has a share button on about anything you can click on. It says share. Share. The technology people figured this out. Share, it's an aspect of essence where we just want to share. It's like, please share something beautiful with this world. Our world needs more beauty, more light, more freedom, more truth, more inquiry, more investigation of the truth. Our world needs this. Our world needs your voice, your soul. Our world needs it. Is calling for it to come forward. Is calling for it. And the way I personally like to look at teaching is I just imagine myself 2 years in the past. Could Craig today help Craig 2 years in the past? Hell yeah. Absolutely. I know a thing or two more than Craig 2 years ago. I know a thing or two more. And so I simply talk like I'm talking to myself a couple years ago. I talk like I'm talking to myself in the present moment, just reminding myself. So if, say we're all in the present moment and we get a little sleepy, so I'd be like, hey, Craig, wake up. Wake up. Feel your heart. Feel the beauty and the divinity that you are. There's never a thought within me that I know more than. I'm better than. The sense of like I'm reminding me. I know me. I see me. I love me. And so the whole student-teacher relationship is I love me everywhere. In all the forms me arises. Just seen of oneself everywhere. No, I'm the great one. You're the lowly student. It even saying that out loud, it feels like hell. It feels like divisiveness. It just feels like, oh, just throw a wall between me and you. No, it's me talking to me. Me talking to me. And if we want our transmission to grow, to deepen, to become more luminous, there's just a couple things we look at. Is how open am I to God? How deeply do I love my own self? Are there any walls between me and me? Are there any walls between me and life, me and you? And so the more distinction between me and you, between self and other, the more you can erase that dividing line of distinction of walls, the more powerful transmission becomes. More powerful transmission becomes. And then, of course, a question for all of us. I'll say this differently. The spiritual path is the exact same, whether you're a spiritual teacher or just stepping on the path. Like, am I connected to God? Am I connected to my heart? Am I living in integrity? Who am I? What is my life about? Like, am I practicing what I'm preaching? Am I experiencing it directly, what I'm talking about? Like, am I experiencing it directly? It's like everyone wants to know that, not just spiritual teachers. Like when you're on the path, like if you can talk about peace but you don't experience peace, it's a real letdown. It kind of sucks. It's like, oh, that doesn't feel any good. So I want to connect more fully with peace. I want to connect more fully with peace. So the same questions for the student are the exact same questions for the teacher. It's the same question, like, how do I live this truth? And this idea that you have to be a perfect human being before you can teach, it's like, there'd be no teachers. There'd be zero. Like none. I don't care what avatar. I've seen a lot of avatars and I've seen them make mistakes. I've seen them in real time make real mistakes. It wasn't crazy wisdom or something like that. That is a real mistake. It's like, so if we all wait till we're perfect before we shine our light, that would be a great definition of sin. Sin is to veil your humanity, to not share your heart. I'm even going to take it a step further. We are obligated to share our hearts with the world. Obligated. How we say it in the South, we're obliged. You are obliged to share your heart. You're obliged. And the key word is, I want everyone to hear me. The only thing I was speaking about was sharing of the heart. If you're sharing from ego, if you're sharing from a role, if you're sharing from a mask, if you're sharing from a spiritual superego, which is a mistake most people make, they start teaching. I hate to say it, but many of my colleagues, my non-dual colleagues, they started teaching purely from spiritual superego. And it's just a repetition of what their teacher said, of what they realized. Maybe they realized it, but they weren't living it, and they just kept repeating it. There's nobody here. Nobody's here. There is nobody. But it's not coming from the direct experience, that it's coming from a memory of it. And when we teach in that way, people will feel it. They'll feel it. They'll be like, huh. And then the students will mimic the parroting of it. And then it's like, gosh. And again, like, that's a transmission. And that's something that happens. Just like in graduate school, people read their professor's books, and then the professor asks them a question, and they answer exactly how the professor wrote, the line in the book. The professor's like, very good. It's like, and so, we have to be careful. It's like, what kind of life are we going to live? What kind of transmission are we offering? Is it awake? Is it alive? Is it fluid? Or is it just a repetitive, parroting, dry, dead, dogmatic mess? And again, like, people think of being a spiritual teacher as a very lofty thing. And I would like to be really clear, there's nothing lofty about it. It's service. It's just giving and giving and giving and giving. People have this idea of being adored and adored and adored. And if you're wanting to be adored, you should be on American Idol or something, like one of those kind of shows. I don't really know where people go to be adored, but you be an Instagram model, and again, that's not even real adoration. If you want to be adored, love yourself fully. When you love yourself fully, you actually forget yourself, and you realize, like, oh yeah, like, I'm here to serve. When I went to Ramana Ashram, I want to say this out loud, I hope this isn't offensive, it wasn't his nephews that were the most enlightened people in the ashram. His nephews were outstanding individuals. I'm going to say this, they were outstanding. The most enlightened individual in the ashram was the food server there. Like, you eat on these banana, I think it's banana leaf plates, and the fella scooping the lentils and the rice. I looked into his eyes, and I saw the majesty of God pouring through him. He didn't have a word to say. He didn't have a philosophy. You could tell he was not bright, bright, like in an intellectual way. The nephews, they were like Oxford educated. They spoke perfect, eloquent English, incredibly sophisticated beings when I met those fellas. But I want to say the cook, I don't even know if he was the cook. He was the scooper. Scoop the lentils on your banana plate. It was like a plate made of leaves. And I looked in his eyes, and my God, was he a living saint, radiating joy. It's been rare in my life when I've seen that much joy just pouring out of a being. Pouring out of a being. And see, he was the teacher. He was the teacher. He didn't say a word. It was a smile was his teaching, where he looked into your eyes fully and completely. And he just radiated the biggest heart. It's like if I could put doodles into a saintly being, it was this fella. Saintly heart. God brings tears to my eyes when I think about him. So like Richard, I think either right now or in the past, like, you worked crisis line. In the crisis line, you're holding space, you're being of service, you're loving the people that are there, you're being compassionate. Of course, your skills are coming forward, but the first thing, as a teacher, as a counselor, as a therapist, is whoever walks in the room, you see them as God. You see them as God. So you see them as God, and you better be in direct communion and relationship with God. If you want to be a good teacher, if you want to be a knowledge-based teacher, spend 5 years reading the books, memorize all the Sanskrit words. People really get into Sanskrit words. This is the drishti. It's like, all right, the drishti. Okay, what's the direct experience of the drishti? That's a better question. But yeah, so are we going to be a memorizer of words, and we're just going to give our students a vocabulary test at the end of the week on Friday? Or are we transmitting something? Are we in touch with the truth? And the big thing to watch out for, just like with everyone, if you do any kind of new trade, any kind of new service or offering, like, are you thinking a lot? Like, are you thinking a lot? If you're thinking a lot, you're referring to mind. Whereas the way my teacher taught me is like, there's nothing scripted. But you sit, you get in touch with your heart, and you see what comes forward. You sit, you get in touch with your heart, and you see what comes forward. And one more thing I'd like to add is you are your first student. You are your first student. Not only do you see you everywhere, but you are your first student. So always remember, like you walk into the room, like Richard's the teacher, Richard's the student. You are your first student. The humanity of Richard is a student of the divinity of Richard. You are your first student. When you know that, it's clear as day. There's humility there. There's simplicity there. There's none of this hierarchy. There's no righteousness. No, I'm no better. None of that. Just know, like, oh, I'm talking to myself in the form of the other. I'm also talking to myself in the form of my own humanity. You are your first student. And boy, if people had that, then it's like, oh yeah. Then you tend to behave. You tend to be sweeter. You tend not to be a know-it-all. There's just so much more love in the room. There's less division. You are your first student. It protects you when you know this. The first person sitting down to hear the class is you. It's you. First person sits down. Like when I sit down, I sit down, I call upon God. It's like, oh yeah, Craig is here to receive the transmission of grace from God. I'm the first student. I'm the first one who arrives. I beat you all to it. I'm the first one here. And I'm a student of this grace. I'm a student of it. And it's like, oh, and boy, does that feel good. It's just so sweet. It's like the sweetest humility in that. So anyways, all right. I apologize if there's more questions. Okay, well, let's see. There's one more here. What about the Pope declaring indigenous inhabitants of the New World, not people, subhuman, could be, oh, geez. Okay. This is a question from Facebook land. So this is a great question. Like after everything I said about a teacher, I'll just say it real simply. Whenever you see a teacher say something that's not true, you feel it in your belly. You feel like a little clench or a little like ache, or you feel an ache in your heart. You're just like, that's not true. That's not true. And so the problem with great organizations like the Catholic Church, but great, I simply mean big, is it's become political. And the Pope, it's like, is the Pope a holy man or is the Pope a political person of some sort? And more often than not, the Pope is both. And that's always a question for us. It's like, how much is my ego getting in the way of the transmission? And so in the question of the Pope, it's like, I'm supposed to be transmitting the energies of Christ, Christ-like love, Christ-like compassion, Christ-like joy. And am I transmitting joy, or am I declaring indigenous people not people, subhumans? Like, of course that's wrong. Of course that's wrong. It stinks. It stinks. And that's the thing is Richard, like when you're teaching, or when any of us are teaching, when any of us are sharing, when you begin to tell a lie, when you begin to step out of the direct experience, in a sense, like that's what a lie is you step out of your direct experience. You're talking about something you're not experiencing. You feel your consciousness shutting down. You'll feel it contracting. And so the Pope should be ashamed of himself. Pope needs to grow up. A lot of people need to grow up, myself included. And so we're all works in progress. And it's unfortunate when people of great power say horrific things like that. Creates great suffering here on planet Earth. Of course, it creates great suffering. And to be a conduit of grace. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? So anyways, I'll leave you all with that question. What does that mean? Be a conduit of grace. Thank you all for your love. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your donations. Thank you for sharing your heart. All the Europeans out there, new meditation starting. It's open to anyone who wants to meditate at 12:30, the first Wednesday of the month, starting in September. You can meditate twice on Wednesday with me if you get excited. Anyways, so much love to each and every one of you. Good night, everyone. Bye for now.